Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the future of your country may have been quietly mapped out years earlier, not in public debates, not during election campaigns, but behind closed doors where only a few powerful figures sit and decide the direction of national politics. In Nigeria, where politics is often loud, chaotic, and unpredictable, the idea of a long-term political strategy designed years in advance sounds almost unbelievable. Yet that is exactly what one prominent Nigerian senator says may have been happening. According to him, the political battles Nigerians are watching today, the crises inside opposition parties, the sudden legal changes, the shifting alliances, may not be random events. They may be part of a larger political design. A design aimed at shaping the outcome of the 2027 elections long before Nigerians even step into the voting booths. That claim is now at the center of a growing political conversation across the country. And the man making that claim is Senator Aminu Waziri Tambuwal. For many Nigerians, Tambuwal is not just another voice in the crowded arena of political commentary. He is a figure who has spent more than 2 decades at the very heart of the country's power structure. He served as Speaker of Nigeria's House of Representatives during one of the most intense periods of political rivalry in the country's democratic history. Years later, he governed Sokoto State, one of the most politically and culturally influential states in northern Nigeria. Today, he sits in the Senate, still closely connected to the inner workings of national politics. Because of this long journey through Nigeria's political institutions, many observers believe Tambuwal has seen how power operates behind the curtain, where strategies are crafted long before they appear in public speeches or campaign rallies. And when someone with that level of experience begins to speak about a hidden political plan, people listen carefully. According to Tambuwal, the story did not start this year. It began quietly sometime in early 2024. At that time, Nigeria was still adjusting to the aftermath of the fiercely contested 2023 presidential election. Political tensions remained high. Supporters of different parties were still debating the legitimacy of the outcome, and opposition groups were struggling to reorganize themselves after the election. But while those public debates continued, Tambuwal says something else was happening away from the spotlight. A small political panel was quietly assembled. It was not announced publicly, there were no press conferences, no official documents circulated widely. Yet, according to the senator, the panel was made up of individuals who understood the machinery of Nigerian politics, professors, political analysts, and experienced politicians who had spent years studying how power moves within the country. Their task, Tambuwal claims, was simple in description but enormous in implication. They were asked to study Nigeria's political future, not just the next election, but the broader trajectory of the country's democratic system. The members of the panel reportedly examined the strength of Nigeria's major political parties, the regional loyalties that shape voting patterns, and the growing divisions within opposition movements. They looked at the emerging political alliances, the influence of money in campaigns, and the role of legal frameworks in determining who can or cannot run for office. Over time, Tambuwal says, the panel reached a troubling conclusion. They believe that the ruling All Progressives Congress might be pursuing a long-term political strategy designed to weaken opposition parties gradually, not necessarily by defeating them directly at the ballot box, but by reducing their ability to function effectively as political alternatives. In other words, the strategy would not eliminate opposition parties entirely, but it could make them too divided, too weak, or too legally constrained to challenge the ruling party successfully. In political science, systems like that are sometimes described as dominant party systems. Democracies where elections still take place, but one party maintains overwhelming control over the political landscape. For Nigeria, a country that fought hard to return to democratic governance after years of military rule, such a possibility carries serious implications. Tambuwal says the panel identified 2 major targets within this alleged strategy. The first was the gradual weakening of the People's Democratic Party, often known simply as the PDP. For many years, the PDP was the most powerful political party in Nigeria. It ruled the country continuously from 1999 to 2015, controlling the presidency, many state governments, and large numbers of seats in the National Assembly. But in recent years, the party has struggled with internal divisions. Leadership disputes have erupted repeatedly. Rival factions have disagreed over strategy, zoning arrangements, and the distribution of political influence across Nigeria's regions. Governors have sometimes taken opposing positions. Party leaders have occasionally clashed publicly. For ordinary voters watching from outside, the result has often looked like a party trying to rediscover its identity in a rapidly changing political environment. Tambuwal claims that weakening the PDP was seen as a critical step in reshaping Nigeria's political balance. But according to him, the strategy did not stop there. The second focus of the alleged plan involved Peter Obi, one of the most prominent opposition figures to emerge in recent Nigerian politics. Obi became central during the 2023 election after running under the banner of the Labour Party. His campaign attracted strong support from young voters, urban professionals, and Nigerians who were searching for an alternative to the country's traditional political structures. Large rallies, energetic online campaigns, and grassroots mobilization turned his candidacy into a national movement. Even though he did not win the election, the scale of his support changed the dynamics of opposition politics in Nigeria. For the first time in many years, a third-party candidate had demonstrated the ability to disrupt the long-standing dominance of the two major parties. According to Tambuwal's account, the panel believed that neutralizing Obi's platform could significantly reshape the opposition landscape ahead of the next election. And this is where the story begins to intersect with the political events Nigerians have been watching unfold. Inside the Labour Party, tensions gradually began to grow. Leadership disagreements intensified. Two rival factions emerged, each claiming legitimacy and authority over the party's national structure. Meetings were held, court cases were filed, statements were issued by competing leaders. For ordinary party members, the situation created confusion. Which faction controlled the official membership register? Which leadership group had the authority to organize primaries? Which decisions would the electoral authorities recognize? These questions lingered without clear answers. As the crisis continued, observers began to worry that the party might lose the unity that had fueled its unexpected rise in the previous election cycle. Then, another development added a new layer of complexity. On the final day of 2025, December 31st, Obi announced that he was resigning from the Labour Party. The announcement immediately sparked debate across the country. Some supporters interpreted the move as a strategic decision to reposition himself politically. Others wondered whether it was a response to the growing internal conflicts within the party. But the situation soon became even more complicated. Neither of the two rival Labour Party factions formally acknowledged or processed the resignation in a clear and unified way. In practical terms, that meant Obi's exact membership status remained uncertain. Was he still officially registered within the Labour Party's records? Or had he already moved outside its structure? The question seemed technical at first, but in Nigeria's legal framework for elections, technical details can carry enormous consequences. Then came another dramatic moment. In March 2026, the House of Representatives passed legislation addressing dual-party membership. The law stated that candidates whose names appear in the membership registers of two different political parties could face disqualification from contesting elections. Supporters of the legislation argued that it would strengthen party discipline and prevent politicians from moving opportunistically between parties during election seasons. But critics immediately noticed the timing.
Because if a politician's name appeared in multiple party registers, even due to administrative confusion or unresolved disputes, the new law could potentially be used to challenge that person's eligibility in court. For analysts following Tambuwal's claims, this was where the pieces of the puzzle began to look unusually connected. A divided Labour Party, an ambiguous resignation, and a new legal framework capable of disqualifying candidates based on party membership records. Whether these events are truly connected remains a matter of political debate. Supporters of the ruling party reject the idea that any coordinated strategy exists. They argue that internal conflicts within opposition parties are the result of those parties' own leadership failures, not the product of external manipulation. But Tambuwal insists that the pattern deserves serious attention because political strategies are rarely visible when they are first designed. They only become clear when people begin to look back and see how separate events gradually formed a larger picture. And in Nigeria's constantly shifting political environment, the line between coincidence and strategy can sometimes be difficult to see. As the country moves closer to the next election cycle, these questions are becoming harder to ignore. If opposition parties remain divided, their ability to present a unified challenge could weaken significantly. If legal disputes over party membership emerge, they could reshape the list of candidates allowed to compete. And if political alliances continue to shift, entirely new coalitions could emerge before the next presidential campaign begins. For many Nigerians watching these developments, the story is no longer just about one senator's claims. It has become a broader conversation about the future of Nigeria's democracy. Can opposition parties overcome their internal divisions? Will new political alliances reshape the balance of power? And most importantly, will voters still have strong and credible alternatives when the country returns to the polls in 2027? These questions remain unanswered, but one thing is already clear. The political story unfolding in Nigeria today did not begin yesterday. And the decisions being made now inside party headquarters, legislative chambers, and private strategy meetings may shape the country's political future for years to come. For citizens trying to understand the direction of their nation, staying informed has never been more important, because in a democracy, awareness is often the first step toward accountability. And the deeper Nigerians look into the forces shaping their political system, the clearer the future of that system may become. The question hangs in the air like a quiet challenge to the nation. Is Nigeria slowly moving toward a one-party political system? It is a question that does not have a simple answer, but it is a question that forces Nigerians to look carefully at the political events unfolding around them. Events that may appear disconnected at first, yet seem increasingly linked when viewed over time. For Senator Aminu Waziri Tambuwal, these events are not random developments. He believes they form part of a sequence, a chain of political circumstances that, when placed side by side, begins to reveal a deeper pattern. To understand why his claim has attracted so much attention, it is necessary to examine the development he points to. The first of these developments lies inside the fragile structure of the Labour Party. The party's rise during the 2023 election surprised many observers. For years, it had been seen as a relatively small political platform with limited national influence. But the presidential campaign of Peter Obi transformed its visibility. Across Nigeria's cities and university campuses, a new generation of voters rallied around the party. Young Nigerians organized political gatherings, created grassroots networks, and pushed the message that the country needed a new political direction. For a moment, the Labour Party appeared to represent something larger than a traditional political structure. It looked like a movement built around frustration, hope, and the desire for a break from the old political order. But movements built quickly can also become vulnerable quickly. After the election cycle ended, tensions within the party began to surface. Different factions started disagreeing about leadership authority, organizational control, and the direction the party should take moving forward. Political parties in Nigeria often reflect the broader diversity of the country itself. Regional interests, ethnic loyalties, ideological disagreements, and personal ambitions all exist within the same structure. When these forces collide, leadership disputes can emerge quickly. Inside the Labour Party, two rival factions gradually formed. Each claimed legitimacy. Each insisted it represented the authentic leadership of the party. Court cases followed. Press conferences multiplied. Statements from rival leaders filled the media space. For ordinary members of the party, the situation became increasingly confusing. Meetings were held under competing authorities. Decisions announced by one faction were rejected by another. Most importantly, questions began to arise about the party's official membership records. In Nigerian politics, membership registers are not merely administrative documents. They are the legal foundation upon which political candidacies are built. Without clear membership status inside a political party, a politician cannot easily contest elections under that party's banner. And when internal disputes make those records uncertain, the consequences can reach far beyond the party itself. This internal conflict formed the first piece of the timeline that Tambuwal now points to. The second development came quietly, almost symbolically, on the final day of the year. On December 31, 2025, Peter Obi announced that he was resigning from the Labour Party. The announcement surprised many supporters. For millions of Nigerians who had followed his campaign, the Labour Party had become closely associated with his political identity. His departure immediately raised questions. Was it a strategic repositioning? Was it a response to the internal crisis within the party? Or was it the beginning of a larger political realignment ahead of the next election? But the situation soon grew more complicated. Neither of the two rival Labour Party factions formally processed or acknowledged the resignation in a unified manner. In practice, this created a strange legal situation. If one faction recognized the resignation but the other did not, which record would the electoral authorities eventually consider? Was Obi still listed in the party's membership register, or had his name already been removed? These uncertainties remained unresolved as Nigeria entered the early months of 2026. Then in March of that year, another development shifted the political atmosphere dramatically. Inside Nigeria's legislative chambers, the House of Representatives passed a new political law addressing dual-party membership. The law stated that for any politician to contest elections, their name must appear in only one political party register. Because of increase in confusion, a greater level of clarity was needed. This new law changed the political landscape for several reasons. First, it introduced a new legal tool that could be used to challenge the eligibility of candidates.
The legislation moved through the chamber with unusual speed. In a sense, the law stated that any candidate whose name appears in the membership registers of two different political parties could be disqualified from contesting elections. Supporters of the law argued that it was necessary to maintain discipline within Nigeria's party system. Politicians switching parties without proper procedures, they said, weakened political accountability. But critics quickly focused on the timing. If a politician's name appeared in multiple party registers due to unresolved disputes or administrative confusion, the law could become a powerful legal tool in election litigation. In Nigerian politics, legal challenges have often played decisive roles in determining who ultimately appears on the ballot. Courtrooms have sometimes become extensions of the political battlefield. For observers studying Tambuwal's claims, the combination of these events raised difficult questions: a divided political party, an ambiguous resignation, and a new law capable of disqualifying candidates based on membership records. Individually, each development might appear routine within Nigeria's complex political environment, but together they formed a sequence that some analysts believed deserved deeper examination. The timing added further tension. By early April 2026, political parties were required to submit their official membership registers to Nigeria's electoral authorities. Once those registers were submitted, they would become legal reference points. If a politician's name appeared in two different registers, the consequences could be severe. Legal challenges could be filed, court cases could begin, electoral commissions could be forced to examine technical membership details that most voters rarely think about. And in a political environment where elections are often decided by narrow margins, even small legal uncertainties can change the trajectory of national politics. As these deadlines approached, political strategists across the country began analyzing the situation carefully. Inside party headquarters in Abuja, discussions grew more intense. Lawyers reviewed electoral laws, political advisors studied potential scenarios. The stakes were rising. But the story does not end with legal frameworks or party registers. Behind every political strategy lies a deeper human dimension: the ambitions of leaders, the fears of communities, and the cultural identities that shape how citizens understand power. In Nigeria, politics is rarely separated from identity. Religion, ethnicity, and regional loyalty often intersect with electoral competition. Leaders must navigate not only policy debates, but also the emotional landscapes of the communities they represent. For many northern politicians, political leadership carries responsibilities that go beyond governance alone. It involves protecting cultural traditions, maintaining religious harmony, and ensuring that the interests of their communities remain visible in national decisions. For southern political movements, the struggle often centers around economic fairness, regional representation, and the search for political alternatives to established power structures. These competing perspectives create a political environment filled with tension, but also with possibility. And within that environment, the actions of individual leaders can influence national conversations in unexpected ways. When Tambuwal decided to reveal his concerns publicly, he entered that conversation at a critical moment. His words forced political observers to look again at events they had already witnessed. They encouraged journalists to examine timelines more carefully. They pushed citizens to ask questions that go beyond party loyalty. Why did certain political crises escalate when they did? Why were certain laws passed at particular moments? And how do internal party disputes sometimes intersect with broader national strategies? These are not easy questions to answer, but they are questions that define democratic accountability. As Nigeria moves closer to the next electoral cycle, the opposition landscape continues to evolve. The once dominant People's Democratic Party is still searching for a renewed sense of unity after years of internal disputes. Meanwhile, the Labour Party continues to navigate the consequences of its leadership conflict. Amid these uncertainties, a new political movement has begun to attract attention. Several opposition figures, including Tambuwal himself, have moved towards the African Democratic Congress, often simply known as the ADC. For some analysts, the ADC represents an attempt to build a new coalition capable of uniting different opposition forces under one platform. Such coalitions are not new in Nigerian politics. In fact, the formation of the ruling All Progressive Congress itself in 2013 emerged from a coalition of opposition groups determined to challenge the PDP's long-standing dominance. Political history shows that coalitions can reshape national elections when they successfully unite diverse political interests. But building such alliances requires careful negotiation. Regional leaders must agree on common goals, political parties must compromise on leadership structures, supporters must believe that unity serves their long-term interests, and perhaps most importantly, potential candidates must remain legally eligible to contest elections. This is where the unresolved questions surrounding Peter Obi become particularly significant. If legal disputes over membership emerge, they could influence whether he can run under a particular political platform in the next election. For millions of Nigerians who supported his previous campaign, that question carries enormous emotional weight. For political strategists studying the balance of power ahead of 2027, it represents a critical variable. Because if opposition forces remain divided, or if key figures become entangled in legal battles, the path to victory for the ruling party could become much easier. Yet, Nigeria's political history also shows that unexpected developments can reshape elections quickly. New alliances can emerge, political movements can grow rapidly, public opinion can shift in ways that surprise even experienced analysts. This uncertainty is part of what makes Nigerian democracy both unpredictable and resilient. As the country approaches the next electoral cycle, citizens across its cities, towns, and villages are watching these developments closely. In markets and offices, in university campuses and religious gatherings, political discussions continue. Some people believe the current political tensions reflect deeper structural changes in the country's democracy. Others see them as familiar patterns within Nigeria's long tradition of competitive politics. But almost everyone agrees on one thing: the decisions being made today, inside party headquarters, legislative chambers, and private strategy meetings, will shape the political choices available to Nigerians in the years ahead. And that brings the story back to the central question raised earlier. Are the events unfolding across Nigeria's political landscape simply the result of ordinary political competition, or are they pieces of a larger strategy slowly shaping the country's democratic future? For now, the answer remains uncertain, but as deadlines approach and alliances continue to shift, the truth will gradually reveal itself through actions, decisions, and the choices made by Nigerians' leaders. For citizens trying to understand these developments, staying informed is essential, because democracy does not survive on elections alone. It survives when citizens watch carefully, ask difficult questions, and demand transparency from those who hold power. And in a country as politically vibrant as Nigeria, that responsibility belongs to everyone. For more stories that explore the deeper forces shaping Nigeria's political future, subscribe to Naija Update 24/7. Because the more Nigerians understand their political system, the stronger that system becomes. And as the road to 2027 continues to unfold, every informed voice will matter.